After visiting Guatemala, I would say it's a very underrated country. I spent 3 weeks there, and in this video, I'm gonna show you how you can do it too. If you're new here and just joining the series, I would suggest going all the way back to episode 1 to get an idea of what's going on. In the previous video, I broke down all my expenses and how much I spent in Guatemala. Now that you know how much I've spent, let me tell you how to get there. Guatemala is located in Central America and borders 4 countries, namely Mexico, Belize, El Salvador, and Honduras. Based on how many countries it's bordering and having a population of over 18 million, you can tell it's a really big country. There's a lot of ground to cover here. From Mayan civilization to active volcanoes to cities still stuck in time, I knew I couldn't cover everything, so I decided to choose 2 cities, Guatemala City and Antigua. Now, how do you get to Guatemala? There are numerous ways to get to Guatemala, but I'm going to show you the ways that I know how to do it so you can do it too. Alright, so if you are a Jamaican, okay, let's backtrack. If you're coming from anywhere in the world and you have a really strong passport, it shouldn't be too difficult. But if you are so unfortunate, or if you're unfortunate to be one of those countries that have a weak passport like Jamaica, relatively weak passport, it's debatable, yeah, you will need a visa. Fortunately, for the fortunate ones, if you are a Jamaican and you have a US, UK, or Canadian visa, and this goes for any other country, if you have a US, UK, or Canadian visa, you can use that to get into the country. If you don't have any of those visas, then you have to apply for the actual Guatemalan visa. Now, this is very interesting because if you already have, as I mentioned, US, UK, Canadian, and a Schengen visa, the lady did say Schengen visa, you can access the country without a visa. And the really good thing about that is that because if you have any of those visas, you can access Guatemala, El Salvador, Nicaragua, and Honduras on the same visa. Once you enter Guatemala, it will give you up to 90 days and it will start counting down. But if you don't have that visa, your requirements get a little bit more tricky. I contacted the Guatemalan consulate in Jamaica yesterday and they gave me a lot of information. So I spoke to the representative and they said that they do not process visas at this very moment. So therefore, Jamaicans would have to physically go to the nearest embassy to get the visa to enter the country. The nearest embassy from Jamaica, based on your situation might be different depending on where you are in the world or which citizen you are. If you're in a country that has an embassy, you won't have a problem. But our consulate doesn't offer the visa process, the visa process. So we have to physically go to Panama to get it sorted. After reviewing all the instructions and everything that they needed, here's a list that they gave me. You need a valid passport that's valid for more than 6 months. Most countries require that. Now you need a return ticket, so they need a flight itinerary, everything back and forth, how you're gonna get there, how you're gonna return home. They need the application form, you have to fill the application form for the visa. They need a photograph, because for the actual visa, every visa has a photograph. They said photographs, but based on my experience when I did my own visa thing, I think I only did 1, but just bring 2 to be safe and get it certified by a JP or something. They need proof of funds. Now, they either need a bank statement for at least 3 months, or they need proof of credit card ownership. This is to ensure that you can fund trip or you can maintain yourself while you're in the country. They just want to know that you can afford it. They would like to know your accommodation, so you're going to have details of your hotel reservation, where you still need the address and all of that information. They are also going to need the purpose of your trip. So like, why are you going there? You could just put tourist. And these are things that possibly they're going to ask you, because you have to physically go to the embassy. Based on my research, the visa is a single entry visa, only once, and the fee is $50. If you want a multiple entry visa, it goes up to about $150. And the downside also is that it only gives you access to one country. I was reading information about Guatemala having this agreement with all of those other neighboring countries, and I thought that you could use that one visa to go to other countries, but based on information I got from the consulate representative yesterday, she said nope, that's not the case. This is a single entry visa for Guatemala only. You will need a different visa for El Salvador if you're going to El Salvador, a different visa for Nicaragua, a different visa for Honduras. And I was like, I guess it makes sense to just have the US or UK visa than anything. Right now it's just looking, because you have to pay way more money, go through a whole bunch of rigmarole for no reason. So you can now see the benefit of not even having a stronger passport, but a stronger visa. That is so crazy. This is police clearance. Make sure when you're going, you call the representative just to be sure, because the information I'm getting here is saying police clearance and a bunch of things, and it might change. They might need more, they might need less. So at the time when you're going, make sure that you check in with the embassy or consulate to see if the information is up to date. But my list here is saying police record. This is like saying in some cases a criminal record may be required. I guess it depends on your occupation. I don't know, because in here they're asking also, they're going to need employment verification. So chances are you're going to need to bring an employment letter to prove that you work somewhere. This is what's required in some cases at the US Embassy, definitely UK. UK is so strict. So just bear that in mind. If you work somewhere, if you're self-employed, you would get, if you're self-employed and have like a business certificate, you could get that printed and can't take it with you. And just to be sure, because you have to physically go in person, walk with your original documents and make sure you have everything together. So when you're ready, you just go in there and do everything. But the problem is that I'm racking my brain trying to think about this. If you really need to go to Guatemala and you have to do whatever, they said there might be some delays, so make sure you go ahead or you apply for the visa in advance, like a month or two in advance, so that there are no delays depending on your trip. 2 months in advance from your trip, so there's no delay. But the thing that I've been thinking about, I was saying to myself, if the processing time for the visa is 5 to 15 working days, not everybody is able to stay away from work that long. And if you have to physically go in they also need your original passport. So if you have to physically take a flight and go to Panama and wait 5 to 15 days until that thing is processed, what about your work back home? What about the expenses in the actual country in Panama? How is that going to work? I think I might need to call back the embassy to understand, like, how does that work? Because if I'm supposed to wait, I can't travel with two passports. If I'm supposed to wait to get back my passport, one, I'm gonna give in it. That means I can't travel. You're gonna have my original copy, and there's only one. I can't travel, so I'm gonna be in a country for 15 days, spending all kind of money in hotel. Chances are, if I'm not related to anybody there, hotel fees, we gotta eat, all of those things. You just be waiting for 15 days, worst case scenario, until you get back the passport. You can't even travel. How does that work? I don't know. How does that work? I was talking to another Jamaican, they said something similar where they had to physically go to the place. But I forgot to ask, did you have to wait until you get back the passport? because in some cases, some of the visas take weeks. How does that work? For example, for Cayman Islands, for them to get the US visa, they have to physically come to Jamaica because there's no embassy in the Cayman Islands. Do they have to wait here the whole time until they get the visa, then go back? I'm not sure. So I'm gonna do some more research and let you know, but it's not looking good. It is not looking good, but I'm just giving you as it comes, babe. I'm just giving you as it comes. You can stay, the visas for 90 days, you can stay up to 90 days. Processing time is 5 to 50. And then when you're actually traveling on the day, everything's sorted out, you got the visas and everything, got the visa and everything. When it's actually time to travel, as always, walk with the itinerary. Walk with the proof that you have money to supply to support yourself. Pretty much almost the same documents. I mean, you don't have to walk with the police record and all that stuff, but walk with the passport, walk with the round trip information, walk with the accommodation because they might need it, and just proof that you have money in your bank account or proof that you have a credit card, walking with so you can support yourself. That's it. The way how I know how to do it, from Jamaica, there you have two routes if you don't have any of those visas. You can either use Copa Airlines, which is normal route. Copa Airlines from Jamaica to Panama, and then from Panama to Guatemala. Very long flight, and listen, some cases the flights are not cheap. I'm not gonna lie. But those are your options. And then you have another airline. So Copa Airlines is owned by Panama. It's a Panama airline. And then you have another airline owned by Dominican Republic, Arajet. It's owned by a Dominican company. You can travel from Jamaica, because they operate in Jamaica as well. So from Jamaica to Punta Cana, and then from Punta Cana to Guatemala City. You're gonna be landing in Guatemala City. Now, if you're coming from another country, for example, you're coming from Panama, or you're coming from El Salvador, or Belize, or Mexico, your job or your work is going to be so much easier because you can travel by bus or through the land border if you have the time, because it, depending on where you are in Guatemala, it could get really, the distance could be really long. And trust me, I've tried it. I'm telling you, it's a trip, okay? It is a trip. You have the option. You can either fly in if you're coming from Jamaica to using those two airlines, or if you're coming from the land border, you could take a bus. I think it's called a Tica bus. Yes, it's called a Tica bus, which is Tica, and that bus runs from Mexico all the way down to Panama. And I have taken that bus from Guatemala all the way down to Panama, so I can tell you it works. And for those who are Jamaicans, picture it as a very fancy Knoxford bus, or for the Americans, or I guess Europeans, you could say either better than a megabus, or it's similar to a Greyhound, something of that sort, or a coach. So yeah, and it's cheaper too, like way cheaper. But if you're coming from Jamaica or any other country, you can travel via plane and get wherever through those routes. If you have a stronger passport, you have more options. But as a Jamaican, those are your options. Let's talk about the questions that they're going to ask you. Now, the questions that they're going to ask you are very straightforward. They're going to ask you questions that almost every immigration officer is going to ask you. One, they're going to ask you about where you're staying. They're going to ask you how long you're staying there. They might ask you. It's not a guarantee, because when I went there, I traveled during COVID and the airport was really scanty. So they weren't really asking much questions. I think they asked me where I was staying, and I think that was it. They'll ask you like, where's the hotel you're staying? So they will ask you questions like that, depending on how you dress. And it's so sad, and it is really sad, but depending on how you dress, they might ask you different questions. They might ask you occupation. Just be open and be ready for those questions, and don't feel like it's intrusive. To be honest, immigration officer can almost ask you any question, and they have the right, or they have the authority to grant you access or deny you access. That's how powerful they are. So please be on your best behavior. Just answer the question. Don't overshare. Just tell them exactly what they ask you. Just answer to the T. Okay? So they're gonna ask you about how long you're staying, where you're staying. They might ask you your occupation. They might ask you about return ticket. If you have one, they might want to see it. And I'm telling you, depending on how you dress, they might ask a different question. And it goes across the board, especially if you're from Jamaica or a country that has a weak passport. The immigration officers are generally biased. So they might think, okay, because you're from a country that has a weaker passport or you're from a developing country, you might not be able to afford the trip. So they might also ask you for, not bank statement, but making sure you know you have the funds to fund the trip, if that makes sense. So yeah, Guatemala wasn't so strict. I don't know, maybe just my situation, but in general, the questions can be around that range. They just want to know why you're there and if you're gonna leave when you say you're gonna leave. That's it. And then that's pretty much it. That's not because they're gonna ask you. They're not gonna ask you anything much. But as a note or as a tip, make sure you have your itinerary printed, especially your hotel. Make sure you have that printed or have that ready, because sometimes you're not able to use your phone. So if you have your itinerary on your phone, you might not be able to use your phone in the immigration area. Or even if you have your phone, you might not have access to the internet. So at least download the PDF document or whatever you have on your phone, so that when the immigration officer said, "Can I see your return ticket?" or "Give me the code," which they did in Panama, they will you have it ready on hand. Another key thing as well, when they're asking you how long you're going to stay there, make sure you tell them in days. Because I had a situation in Costa Rica where I told the guy 1 week and he put 5 days, and I'm guessing that he thought in his head maybe 5 days, he's thinking Monday to Friday. So because he did that, my accommodation was booked for 7 days. I was supposed to be there for 7 days. However, he stamped and wrote 5 days in my book. And because I normally look on what they stamp when they stamp it, I was able to see, wait, they only gave me 5 days. So I had to adjust my accommodation to reduce it to the 5 days so I could get out of there during the 5 days. Because you might have planned you want to stay there for 2 weeks, but the immigration officer might give you 3 days. So just bear that in mind, that they have that much control over your stay, and they can mess up your plans. So I had to make sure, luckily I didn't have like a flight that I was going through. I was taking a bus to the next country, so I didn't have to worry about the return one. But it could have gotten real sticky if I had to leave via plane during that whole trip. So make sure when they stamp the book, you're able to look in it and you can see what they wrote, because some of the stamps that they give you, they will give you the number of days you can stay there. Like a lot of them will say like 90 days, 30 days, they'll write it in there, and depending on what they write, you have to abide by that, because if you go over, then you have a whole other problem. You have a whole other situation, honey. So please, I'm begging you, when they stamp the book, make sure you look in the book to see what is there. There are a lot of attractions to see here. Central America is filled with a lot of volcanoes. Guatemala has some of the most active ones, and the most famous one being Acatenango, which I experienced. If you're not up for volcanoes, you could check out the Mayan ruins in the Tikal National Park with over 3,000 structures. You could explore Antigua, the city surrounded by volcanoes. Yes, more volcanoes. It still looks like it's stuck in the 16th century, and it's one of UNESCO's World Heritage Sites. From lakes and natural pools to city life and Instagram-worthy sites, you name it, they have it. Knowing where your embassy is in the country that you're visiting is very important. This is very helpful in the event that you lose your passport, you have questions that you have to ask, you have things you have to resolve. They are your representative in the country. So if you run into any problems whatsoever, your safe haven is going to be the consulate or the embassy location. So you run into problems, head there for safety. That's going to be your closest point. Unfortunately, not every country has a representative in every country. Same with Jamaica, we're not represented everywhere. So you might not be able to get the help that you need. Worst case scenario, so in cases like where you like, let's say you forgot you lost your passport. The first place you're gonna go is to the embassy or consulate. And for Jamaica, our consulate is located in Guatemala City, and for the most part, most of those embassies or consulate is going to be located in Guatemala City. So if you are in another city like Antigua or Flores or Tikal, it's going to be, Guatemala is a very big country. So if you have an issue in another city, you're going to have to come to the main capital city to handle business there, because most of the businesses or the embassies and consulates are located there. Make sure you have an idea of where your country is represented in the country that you're traveling. That way, if you run into problem, you lose your passport, something happen with your passport, any form of issue, you need to get extracted out of the country, you gotta go there. That's why it's helpful. So it's good to know. Alright, there you have it, guys. That's the end of this video. I know it took me a really long time to get this, but I was racking my brain. I physically... So my country, they have a lot of challenges. And one of those challenges is government agencies. Their government agencies, a lot of their phone numbers just don't work. So because I want information on the embassies, I was calling and couldn't get through. I had to physically go to these places to get information. So that's one of the reasons it took this long for me, and just gathering information here and there just to provide to you as it relates to the visa, because they were saying, oh, we have an embassy, but I couldn't find the embassy. I was calling them, but it wasn't working, all this stuff. So yes, thank you for your patience, and I'm going to try my best to not miss a week. I think we've missed, 2 weeks now? And I'm going to work on that to make sure it doesn't happen again. Okay, I'm going to jump back on the schedule. I have a couple of videos in queue waiting to release, so bear with me as we ramp things up and go to 2 videos a week this time and going forward. So I'm trying to get out all of the old videos so that you can see the new stuff. I want you to follow me through my process of planning season 4, because that's where I'm going at right now. Yep, season 4. But before I jump into season 4, I want to hurry and get through all of season 2 and season 3, so that you can get rid of all the old footage from a couple of years ago and then be up to date with countries from last year and this year. I'm about to do some crazy videos for this year and this season. Very interesting countries. I'm so excited about them. But before I jump into this country without a plan, I want to take you with me through the process of planning the trip, how I choose the countries, how I decide the budget, how I apply for those visas, because the countries I'm going to, about 4 or 5 of them I require a visa. And I mean, some of them they don't have a physical embassy here. So I'm gonna have to navigate that situation we spoke about earlier with Guatemalan embassy. You have to physically go to the Guatemalan embassy in Panama. I'm going to be experiencing that. So I'm going to take you along with me so you can see the entire process. I know it's going to be frustrating, and I know they don't have enough information here and there and all the places. I'm going to have to be digging on the place for information, but I'm going to take you with me through the entire process. So stay tuned. The next video we're talking about that's coming up for when I'm going to release it Wednesday. You're going to see me leave from Guatemala to El Salvador. So thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned for next video, which is going to come up on Wednesday and then the following Saturday. Ciao.